Hello and welcome to News of the Hour. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. News of the Hour can be watched on youtube.com/NDTV, and this is where we go beyond the headlines to give you the real background information on the big news story of the day. Every morning we put out a list of the big stories we're tracking right through the day, and we ask you to write in or be part of NDTV's poll to pick the story that you want to follow today on NDTV 24/7 and of course on News of the Hour on YouTube. Today we talked about the government opposition set for the face-off in Parliament, and that got 27% of votes. Maharashtra government formation, another important chapter there, with Sharad Pawar and Sonia Gandhi expected to meet this evening. 17% of you voted in saying you wanted to know more about that story. The big pollution meeting, last time it was a no-show. Is it going to be any better this time? That got 11% of your votes. But the whopping winner with 44% of our viewers' votes was the JNU students' long march to Parliament, and that really has been one of the biggest stories we've been tracking through the day. So let's just give you a sense of how it all began this morning. Remember, just 5 days ago, we saw those massive protests outside the JNU campus. The first time when these protests really hit the headlines. They've been continuing for the last several weeks, but perhaps they grabbed the maximum number of eyeballs when JNU students protested outside the AITCE campus when the Vice President was there for a convocation ceremony, and that's when really the issue of the hostel fee hike hit the headlines. JNU students have been saying that there's been a massive fee hike in their hostel fees, and this is something that a majority of students are not going to be able to afford, that this will change the very demographic, the very democratic nature of the university. And they say that a partial rollback that was in fact announced by the Education Ministry, the HRD Ministry, was in fact an eyewash. Well, today, 5 days after that first round of massive protests, they're protesting again. This time they said they were going to march on Parliament and try and meet with their elected representatives to share their anxieties and concerns about this fee hike. So let's take a look at exactly what happened through the day, and it really is the big trending story on our website ndtv.com as well. Now, it began shortly after 10:30 this morning. The police, in fact, already imposing Section 144, which forbids the assembly of large groups right outside the JNU campus. So not only was there a big police presence, we were told at the last count at least 1,200 cops, and their numbers were increasing. But right outside the JNU campus gate, the main gate, there was the first level of barricades, and then 3 other sets of barricades were set right down the road on which the campus is situated. So at around 10:30 this morning, we saw students coming out of the campus, breaching that first level of barricades, defying Section 144, which forbids the gathering of more than 4 people at one time. Already there were hundreds of students present there with shouting slogans, with massive posters in their hands. They breached the first level of barricades. They breached a second level of barricades a few meters down that road, and then a third level of barricades as well. This was at a distance of about 1 kilometer from the main gate of the JNU campus, and in fact outside a Kendriya Vidyalaya school, which is just down the road from the JNU campus. And that's when the police decided that they were going to intervene and not let them get any further. And that was when there were scuffles, there was a bit of a clash. Several students were in fact then dragged off by the police, and this included the JNU Students' Union President, Oishi Ghosh, who has been leading these protests. She had in fact spoken to NDTV just a short while before that and talked about why students are saying that the rollback that has happened is just an eyewash. It's a partial rollback, and it's really not going to make a difference to the economically weaker sections of students. To actually, in fact, 43% of students of JNU who have a family income of less than 1,44,000 rupees a year. Now, why I mention this figure is very important. What this recent fee hike would do, and let's just get those numbers back up for you. The university has hiked double room rent from 10 rupees to 300 rupees a month, single room rents from 20 rupees to 600 per month, and put in a one-time refundable mess security deposit. That's also gone up from 5,500 rupees, the one-time fee, to 12,000 rupees. Apart from this, there is also an annual service charge. Now, this fee was partially rolled back, and in fact, the administration said the room rent would be either 600 rupees or 300 for those who are the BPL category, or the below poverty line category, for a single room, and for a twin sharing room, it would be 150 for students. But they said that there would be no rollback as far as the one-time fee was concerned. Now, what is the point of contention over here? And it really is important, I think, to understand the nature of JNU and the kind of university campus that it's been. Well, students in JNU will tell you, and the people who are really at the forefront of these protests will tell you, that for 43% of JNU students, their family incomes are less than 1.4 lakh rupees a year. You're talking about a fee hike which is now to the tune of between 62,000 rupees a year and 66,000 rupees a year for a vast number of students, almost half the number of students in the university. This fee hike is something that they simply cannot afford to pay, and this would mean that they would have to drop out of further education altogether. Now, many would argue, and many have argued, that there are students in colleges around the country who are in fact paying far higher fees, whether it's hostel fees or educational fees. And they say, why should JNU students be the only ones who should in fact benefit from taxpayers' money paying these huge subsidies, which then keep them in class and get this kind of higher education, when other students are having to take exorbitant student loans to get the same facilities. Well, the counter argument to that, and one that JNU students make very vociferously, is that JNU has always been the kind of campus where diversity has been encouraged, where there have been many students who come from scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, from economically backward families, from discriminated and marginalized groups. And JNU's great strength has been that these students, with their diversity, have added to the discipline, the academic rigor, the vibrancy of the campus. And if that was to go away, then JNU would cease to be the JNU that has always existed. An institution which may have been in the headlines for the wrong reasons recently, but has always been known for its academic rigor, for its academic excellence, and for students who have gone on to make a mark no matter what they chose to do. Well, let's also talk about how these protests have played out today and the kind of police presence there has been. Now, it's very, very unusual to see just the number of, we'll come back to that when that plays out again. But we already know that right in the morning, there were at least 1,200 cops outside JNU, and that the security just sort of increased as we progressed. And indeed, the students were supposed to march on Parliament, which is a 12-kilometer route from the JNU campus. They haven't proceeded beyond even a kilometer. They were stopped just a kilometer away from the institute. Even if you look at these overall crowd pictures, just by the number of khaki uniforms you see over there, you'll know just how big a police presence there was. And in fact, students are now calling this JNU emergency. Hashtag JNU emergency is trending on Twitter right now as students ask why a democratic protest was met with this kind of response. Why was there the need for such a massive police presence? Now, they're saying that we want to just march on Parliament, meet with our elected representatives, share our concerns. Why are we not being allowed to do that? And in fact, if you look at Parliament, then already kind of roads leading up to Parliament, there's a sort of unstated Section 144 that is always in place that forbids the gathering of any kind of large groups. So presumably students wouldn't even have been able to get all the way to Parliament. They would have been stopped long before that. That didn't happen. They were stopped within a kilometer of their own campus. Students say that several of their contemporaries, several of their compatriots are still in police detention. They haven't they don't know why it's taking so long for the police to release them. It's a bit of a standoff at the moment. Students haven't really progressed beyond a particular point, and it's been a tense standoff, but so far it's been peaceful. The police, to give them their due, has been fairly restrained so far, and everything is being videographed. If there are, in fact, any repercussions later, there's going to be a lot of video evidence to look at. But really, the larger question about the fee hike, about the very nature of JNU, that's something students say they will not allow to be compromised in a situation like this. One other question everyone is asking is, why has the Vice-Chancellor of JNU not met with students yet? That has been one of the main demands of students. They say they want the university administration to come out and speak with them. That hasn't happened yet. And yet there are 1,200 cops and many more on the streets outside the campus. But the Vice-Chancellor, who has been making appeals to students to come back to class, hasn't found the time to meet students of his own university yet. And that continues to be a big question. Well, we'll continue to get you all the latest updates on that big story and all the others we're tracking here on NDTV 24/7. You've been watching News of the Hour. Remember, you can log on to youtube.com/NDTV and get all the latest updates, the behind the scenes information, and all the in-depth analysis of the day's biggest headlines.